Ah, okay. Hi, I'm Samuel Rukin. I was at Merchant Taylor's until 1998.
Fantastic. And would you mind just telling us a bit about your, well, where you are now and what you do now, but also your journey from school to here?
Sure. So, yeah, so it's now been it's now been a long time since I was at Merchant Taylor's, and I now live in Chicago. I just moved here from Los Angeles, where I've been for the last 5 years. Going back to the beginning, before I wound up where I am now, I left Merchant Taylor's and went to Hull University, where I did a degree in drama. I fully intended on becoming an actor, but I knew I wanted university experience before training at drama school. I didn't really feel ready to just train in that way. Training as an actor is a very specific and focused endeavor, and I wanted to have a bit more fun before I put my nose to the grindstone, honestly, and also like have a little bit of academic input as well. So I went and did my drama degree, and Hull was amazing because it was actually 70% practical. So there was very little written work, which after being at school for as many years as you are, it was like a relief. And so I did my bachelor's degree there, and then I then started the process in my final year of auditioning for drama schools in England, and I knew that my first choice was Bristol Old Vic, and that was the second place I auditioned for, and the second offer I got. So as soon as I got the offer from there, I actually cancelled all of my other auditions, including for RADA, because I knew that was the course I wanted to do, and that was the place I wanted to train. So I was very fortunate that everything lined up, and I got a coveted place there. And so then I did a 2-year diploma at Bristol Old Vic. So that course is great because it's designed for people who either have been in the business and are a bit older and want to come back and train more intensively, or are just a bit older and have now decided that they're ready to train as an actor, or have come from a university environment and don't want to do yet another 3 years of being a student. So it's really super intensive. There's only 12 or 14 of you on the course, so which is why it's so hard to get in, because there's just not very many places. And so I did that, and then in my final kind of month at drama school, I got signed by an agent in London, at ICM at the time. They're now called Independent Talent, and then pretty much straight after, I started auditioning for actual jobs in the same way that you would interview for jobs if you were doing another degree, before I'd left drama school. And I moved to London. I think I'd been in London for a couple of weeks, and then I got my first job. So it was a pretty luxurious start to an acting career, really, that I was just working kind of straight away. And so I did a touring production of Taming of the Shrew, just playing some small roles, and then that was really the beginning of a good kind of, I'd say, 4-year stretch of just doing theatre. And I just sort of and putting what I'd learned into practice, and so yes, so then I did all sorts of different jobs, and wound up doing, I think I did 4 shows at the National Theatre, and then from there I went to the Royal Shakespeare Company, and then it was around that time that I booked my first movie, which was Mike Lee's Happy Go Lucky, and that film did so well, you know, in many different departments. It was Oscar nominated, and you know, Sally won Best Actress in a bunch of places, Golden Globe and whatever. So that kind of got my face in America, and just in the film industry in general. And then from there, you know, I just started doing more and more camera work, and you know, a lot more films, and then more TV, and still kind of lucky enough to do some theatre. About once a year I would do, you know, once or twice a year I managed to squeeze a play in, and was having a great time. And then in 2006 I met my wife, my now wife, and she's American, and a few years later, about 5 years later, we decided to get married, and I decided to move to America. But that was because I was able to get representation in America. So I'd already, you know, I'd done, when that first movie came out, but I think it was 2007 when the film actually came out, I went out to LA and met a bunch of agents, and actually decided not to sign with anybody at the time, because I wasn't going to really be spending any time in America, and I had other stuff going on, and I was about to go and start shooting Harry Potter, so I knew I was going to be like busy for the next year, and so it didn't really make sense to make myself unavailable to agents in America. So we didn't do it at that point. And then years later, when I decided I actually wanted to move to America, then I went and did a whole nother round of meetings with people, and then found a manager who I loved, who I'm still with to this day. So that was in New York. So I moved to New York, and then shortly after being allowed to work, which took about, you know, I think it was about 4 months before I was actually legally allowed to work in the US. And then I got a job on Broadway, doing Cyrano de Bergerac, and that was pretty exciting. And then shortly after that, I booked a TV show called Turn: Washington Spies on AMC, and that took me through the next kind of 5 years. And then I was in between seasons doing bits on other shows, other TV shows in America, and then some movies here and there. And then when that show wrapped and it was all done, then I moved to Los Angeles, and things were going great. And then the pandemic happened. So now, you know, having had a really great run of, you know, really kind of, you know, a career that's been building and going somewhere now, you know, I would argue that one of the most injured industries is the entertainment industry. So, I mean, productions are going back now, but they're predominantly things that were already happening. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of trepidation about green lighting things right now because no one knows what's about to happen. But that's separate from my story, but that's where we are right now. Right now, I've been doing a lot of voiceover work, and I'm, you know, hopeful for 2021, but we'll see what happens. But you know, I'm a writer too, so we'll talk about that as well. But like, so I've not been twiddling my thumbs, but that's kind of my story really, from merchant tailors to now.
Yeah, so that's good that you obviously have been able to do some work during the pandemic so far, because again,
yeah,
to others in the industry who've struggled or have ended up just going into something completely different, or, you know, having to work in a completely different industry just to make ends meet.
Yeah, I mean, that's what will keep me up at night, you know, is, you know, am I in the middle of the moment where I have to pivot and do something completely different?
Mm.
But I think that's, I mean, there's obviously like an existential reality to that, which is, you know, I need to sustain, you know, I have 2 children and I have you know, a house, and, you know, I need to pay my bills like every other human being. And
Mhm.
so, you know, there's a reality to that. But, you know, I think one of the, I mean, certainly when I became an actor, um, I don't know if there's another question about this, but when I became an actor, um, it wasn't really pushed on you as an actor that you were anything other than an actor. And it's certainly at the time, I don't think it's entirely true now, but at the time, it was also very British to be one thing, as opposed to, I mean, we weren't in a gig economy at that point, you know. We only had just all started getting mobile phones when you know, no one had a phone in school, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, that's all new, but at the time, you were an actor, you trained to be an actor, and you went out and you did it, and then you would kind of, you know, if you weren't working, you would get a job in hospitality on the whole. And you know, the same in America too, I found out, obviously. And then, you know, like anywhere, like you supplement your life with other jobs that you can leave pretty quickly. So but now, if I had anything to do with training actors, which I have along the way, but it would all be about having many different things that are related that you are able to do. So in times where one part of what you do, for example, let's say you're not booking jobs, you're not booking any jobs for 6 months. Well, ideally, there's something you can do that uses your skills that you are trained to do, that doesn't mean you have to, not that there's anything wrong with it, and I've done it many, many times over, that means that you don't have to work in a bar or a restaurant, you know, that maybe you can use the talents that you have, you know, because anybody can work in a bar and a restaurant, and you know, and that's great. But like, if you have other skills, then you should be using them. So anyway, with that in mind, over the years, I've learned that the hard way. And, you know, I started writing. Well, I've always written, you know, creatively. I always loved writing creatively. Even at Merchant, like, it was one of my favorite things when we did get to do creative writing. It was something that I would relish rather than writing my history essays. And so I, you know, have been working on my writing for a long time. And so whenever I'm available and not needed, you know, on set, or, you know, or even if I am, like, in my trailer on my downtime, I'm writing, you know. So since, you know, I've made a couple of my own films, and then I've also, you know, I now have a production company, and we do projects for other people, often in the corporate space, you know, or in we have a project right now that's there's an esports game called PUBG Mobile, which is huge in particularly India, and but it's all around the world now. It's a massive multi-billion-dollar game.
Yeah.
And we've been making a series of videos throughout this year, which has been incredibly challenging, as you can imagine, you know, around their tournaments. And I wrote as part of my piece of that project. So my partner in crime, he's been shooting everything. We should have been going around the world together shooting it, but he's been doing all of that. And but I wrote all of the treatments for that. So I wrote all the episode outlines, and that's a money job, you know. And also I, over the years have been, since I moved to New York, ironically, when I was in England, getting a voiceover job seemed to be like the hardest thing in the world. Like, I had no trouble getting hired as an actor. Like, I mean, no trouble is over egging the pudding, but you know, like, I was busy enough doing acting jobs, just regular acting jobs, and or teaching in between. You know, that was the thing that I found that I was good at. And but I couldn't get a voiceover job. I had a voiceover agent. Nothing ever happened. And then I moved to America, and then like almost immediately started working with my voice, and started doing commercials and audio books. And the audiobook world has become like a staple of my income, basically.
Okay.
Like, I mean, that is something that I do. I would say minimum I would do a book a month.
Wow.
And I mean, thankfully, because there's a publisher that likes to hire me. But like, you know, but over the years, it's something that I've like really cultivated and got good at. And through, you know, as COVID-19 started to, you know, get its arms around the world, and in LA was ahead of the curve. California is always ahead of the curve, and when it comes to, you know, that kind of like being careful and you know, being progressive and you know, meeting things head on, and California locked down way before England did, way before the rest of America did, which meant our industry shut down too. And I, at least of the people I knew, was one of the only actors who had a job, because I you know, I was still booked. People were still making audio books. You know, I had my studio set up at home to do voiceover auditions, and then I would still think like studios. If you're recording an audio book, you're one person's on one side of a glass, per engineers on the other. It's like designed for it, and you don't have to come into contact with anybody. And the volume actually went up, because I think there were a lot of people who couldn't go in and do that, or wouldn't, like just weren't prepared to go. So I actually was working, you know, and then I also did an animated series as well. But it's been a really interesting time where I've had to really rely on those things that were side hustles, you know. But I think like being an actor, you know, in a way, like, whilst that can be your main discipline, you should kind of take that terminology away and say you're an artist. And when you describe yourself as an artist, you broadly describe in a much more comprehensive way what it is that you do, or are capable of doing. So that's really been the story of the last year, you know.
Yeah, that's great though that you've been able to. And are there different skills needed for voiceover type work, audiobooks? Have you had to develop the skills over time? You sort of said that you've gained experience.
I mean, there are different skills, but there are different, you know. I think if you're an actor, and if you're a good enough actor, you know, there's skills that they're tools that you already have in your toolbox. You just haven't picked them up yet. And so you know, you are applying the skills that you already have into a discipline you just haven't done before. So there are things, you know, that, you know, I was actually just talking with my wife about this before we began this chat, that, you know, like, it's the same with camera technique. Camera technique is just literally knowing how it all works.
Mm.
But the nuts and bolts of what makes drama and storytelling moving or whatever, those things are true whether it's a radio play or in a theater or on a movie set. It's all the same, you know. It's just you're applying it in a different medium, so it requires different techniques, but the techniques are learned techniques. The other stuff is, well, I don't know about where that comes from, but well, I do, but it's you know, that's more like catching butterflies, you know. But
Yeah.
the other stuff is, you know, and I'd say that's the same about voice work too. Like, you know, is that you can get, if you're a, you know, a curious artist who has the ability to use their voice in different ways, which as an actor is kind of necessary regardless, that you know that you'll figure it out pretty quickly. But it's, you know, I also had, you know, the first book I did was with, you know, a company in New York who they've since been bought by Audible, I believe, but like they've been doing it a very, very long time, and the person that sort of trained me was old school, and you know, I learned fast, and you know, and was given some really great tips, and that's, you know, it's just practice. It's like anything, you know.
Yeah.
But I've been really grateful that it's been available to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. No, that sounds like a good thing in these times. Have you got a perhaps apart from this last few months, but is there a project you look back on and think that was particularly challenging and that you had to really get out of your comfort zone and kind of learn a lot from?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I learn a hell of a lot on every single job, and you know, like, it's like anybody doing any project, it's never what you think it's going to be. Like, you know, you have a preconception about what things are going to be like, and then you do them, and then afterwards you look back and go, God, that never went, it never goes as planned, you know. Like, I often say, like, the best part of doing any acting job is, I mean, one of the most fun times is between being offered it and starting it. You know, where you're telling all your friends you got this great job, and you know, you're just riding that wave for a bit, and then at some point, you know, can sometimes be the minute before they roll camera, or it can be several weeks before you suddenly hit the ground with a bump and realize you've actually got to do some work. So but yeah, I've you know, there's been a couple of jobs where I've had to take over from somebody else. That's always tricky.
Yeah.
It's tricky, not just creatively, but like interpersonally as well. You know, like, it's difficult to, you know, it was when I was doing Great Expectations. One of my first big jobs was when I was at the Royal Shakespeare Company. Like, I wasn't originally cast in the lead as Pip in Great Expectations. I was playing Herbert Pocket. That's who I wanted to go for. I loved that character, and I went up for it, and I got it. And I was really excited to be doing it. And then the guy who was playing Pip got sick and pulled out, and we had 2 weeks to go before we opened. And they offered it to me. And that was a classic example of it being thrilling to be offered it. And that lasted about 2 hours, because I found out at 10 o'clock the night before the next day of rehearsal, and then at 7 o'clock in the morning I got picked up by the director, and we went for breakfast, and then had a powwow, and then we went to work. But that was one of the biggest lifts I've had to do as an actor. Like, it was, you know, the guys on stage for like 3 hours with people just coming in and doing scenes with you. I left the stage twice in like 3 hours.
Wow.
And I mean, apart from going from running around the stage to do another entrance somewhere or change costume, the actual downtime, I think I remember it, because I used to go off having been on stage for about 30 minutes, just go off and down about a liter of water, and then wait like a few seconds, and I used to eat a banana, I think, I remember at that. There's all these little things that start happening as routine. I would also eat a banana, and then I would go back on. And then there was the interval, and that was it. That was the only break from the show. So anyway, there was a lot of lines to learn. There was a lot of moves to remember, and it was just really, really, I remember it being really difficult. Obviously, having climbed that mountain and got to the top, it was also one of the most satisfying feelings to get through that. So I would say that was the first big one that was scary and, you know, and challenging, and for obvious reasons. But I guess another time, you know, sometimes you're challenged by conditions. Like sometimes you're freezing, but you're not supposed to be in the story, or like, you know, sometimes you're just exhausted. But I think, like, for me, like well, sometimes the script is bad. Sometimes you're working with bad dialogue. They're sometimes the hardest. They're always the hardest jobs, actually, because then you're having to make something good that, you know, you're cooking a soup with not fresh vegetables. You know what I mean? Like it's hard. So I find, you know, but over the years, like, I've been better at, you get better and better at saying no to the things that you know are going to go badly for you.
Yeah.
They'll be right for somebody. Somebody will like doing that job. I mean, right now I'd probably say yes, a lot easier, but but like generally you get better at saying yes and no to things. And so I would, you know, now certainly at the beginning of your career, you're just like yes to everything, as you should be, by the way. You should say yes to absolutely everything.
Well, I was going to ask that, actually. It's an interesting question, though, isn't it? Because it's obviously a confidence thing. As you get further into your career, you feel like you can say yes and no, but presumably there is a chunk of time when you should be saying yes to everything, or you should try and.
Yeah, I have a bit of a theory about it. Like, I would say that I have generally, and there are some elements to why, which I'll come back to in a second, but like I've generally said yes to virtually everything I've ever been offered. Like virtually everything I've ever been offered, I'd said yes to. And the reason for that is because I don't really go up for anything that I don't want to do. Mm-hmm. I also have always, luckily, knock on wood, had excellent representation. And that is not a luxury that everybody has. Mm. If you have really good reps, by that I mean an agent, or in America we have managers as well. Yeah. If you have good representation, they start to tune into what you're going to respond to, and they won't send every project that comes across their desk that has, you know, a job for a white dude who's 40, like that. You know, they won't send you everything. They'll send you what's right for you in their eyes and what they think you will like doing, so that when the project comes through, it's something that you more than likely will want to go up for. And then in addition to that, I also think that you generally get offered, it depends what's kind of stage in your career you are at, obviously, but, you know, when you want jobs more than jobs want you, I tend to believe that you get the jobs that you're right for. Mm-hmm. And the jobs that you will get offered are the jobs that you connect with. And if you connect with it, then it's probably something you want to do. And, you know, so it becomes easier. You know, you can take the pressure off yourself in that respect. Now that's because I've been like blessed with like a good team around me. But like sometimes, you know, I know lots of friends who, like, you know, the projects have come in and they've looked okay on paper, and then you go and you find out, like, I have one friend that I'm thinking of who, you know, found himself in the middle of the countryside in Prague doing a movie. Like, they would just be like in the back of a car, like just, you know, doing crazy hours, doing crazy things, deferring payment, not getting paid, like, just, you know, it can get ropey pretty fast if you say yes to the wrong thing. but yeah, like you just become better at choosing stuff, you know. And it's the same in any line of work, right? You know, eventually at the beginning you just want any job, and then the more you go through your life, you're like, no, I want the job that's right, because, you know, it's important that I don't hate the days that I'm spending my time with, you know, like, so
Yep.
yeah, you know, there's a balance, but I think you get better, the more you go on, the better you get at picking stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you got a favorite project from over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I've loved a lot of the jobs I've done. I mean, a favorite would be difficult, because, you know, a lot of the times they're good for different reasons.
Yeah.
You know, I would say probably it'd be hard to not say that Turn, the show that I did on AMC, was like, you know, it was a massive deal for me, because it was the first major role I had on TV in America. It immediately changed the perception of who I was in the industry, and it was also a job where the character was initially not meant to be as big as it became, and as a product of the work I was doing with the character, the role got bigger, and it meant that I kind of got to build the role from the ground up. Like, it wasn't just given to me and there you go, act, you know, it was, we kind of made it together, you know, with the writers and the creators, and that was like a really rare experience. So I felt what was great about that was, it, you know, apart from the outside stuff, just creatively, it felt really integrated, and it felt like I was more than just an actor doing a job. And that, you know, that doesn't happen all the time. It happened recently again. I did an episode of a show called Counterpart on Stars, with J.K. Simmons, and I went in. It was an episode that was a flashback, like 40 years, and what happened was, you know, all the regular characters that were in the show were not in this episode, and I was the main character on that flashback episode. And I was also playing in Counterpart. There's a parallel universe, so there's two of you. There's like an alpha you and another you. So so I was acting with myself a lot of the time. Like, I would do one half the scene and then swap around to the other half the scene. But again, it was a standalone episode. I got to work very closely with the writer of it, and, you know, and have a real input into what was happening. And I think that's, like, you know, where, if there's been an evolution, it's that, you know, I want to be more involved, you know, and I want to be, I want to see at the table of creating the thing, instead of just, I mean, I'll always be an actor for hire, always, and happily. But where I'm going to be most happy is when I'm able to contribute to. And I think that's somewhere, I think most actors arrive at that place. You know, the further along you go, the more you want to be involved in how it's happening, not just your part of it. So, you know, sometimes it's lovely to just be a cog in the big machine too. But, like, you know, I get a lot of satisfaction from being involved in the creative as well. Yeah,
that makes sense. You said that you knew you wanted to go into acting right from when you were at school. Obviously, you chose to study drama at uni, go to drama school. Is there any advice you would give to kids, you know, who are at school now, who are thinking about it, would love to go into acting or anything creative, really? What would you?
Yeah, I mean,
what advice would you give them?
Dr. Gill, bring him back. Make sure he's there all the time. Dr. Gill was he's still teaching at the school, right?
He's not. So he doesn't teach at school anymore. He is still involved in some of the drama productions. So he retired from teaching last year.
So Doc Gill was like a huge influence on my time at Merchant Taylors, and he was my English teacher when I first got there, and then of course he did all the drama stuff, and gave me a lot of opportunities to spread my wings and be terrible and sometimes be good, and just be involved and do as much or as little as I wanted to do. And the truth of the matter is that when I was at school, right up until I was about 15, I would say, maybe a year before, maybe 14, I wasn't thinking about it as a job. Like the idea, like I actually firmly believe that, look, I haven't lived in England for a decade, but I think, often as kids, you're asked to think about what it is you want to do way too early. Like, and for me, either because I was like ignorant, but I didn't even think about acting as a job because I didn't know that anyone, hadn't quite, the connections hadn't been made that it was a job. I was just having fun, which leads me to my piece of advice, which particularly with something artistic, whether it's music, whether it's writing, whether it's any painting, any expression of art, should, for as long as possible, just be fun. It should always be fun. Like, it should always be something that gives you at least satisfaction, even if it's difficult or painful or whatever it is, as art often has to be. But like, it should be satisfying, and particularly as a kid, it should just be fun. And so that's what I did. And it served me really well because I didn't think about it as a job until much later. And I remember at a parents' evening once, Simon Dawkins, who was the headmaster at the time, I was there with it was one of those parents' evenings where you were there as well. I guess I must have been like around GCSE time, when is that when you go with your parents as well? You're like invited.
Yes.
So I would go, I went to the parents' evening, and we had our moment with the headmaster, which is like being with God. And helped because he looked kind of,
he still does.
He looked like he lived on a cloud, and
he still does.
Yeah, he's a lovely man. Anyway, he said at the time I thought I wanted to be a stage manager. Oh, that's why I was talking about this, because I thought, I didn't think acting was a real job, and it turned out neither did Simon Dawkins. But he also, I remember saying, like, I remember deciding, well, I'm not going to be an actor, but I'll be a stage manager. I'll be a stage manager. That sounds like a real job. I remember going with my parents, and he was like, so what is it you want to do then, Sam? And I said, well, I'm thinking of being a stage manager. And he took a cursory look at both of my parents, and then he looked down at me and he said, how much does one of these stage managers make? And I realized that I had no idea. And that I had to have I'd have to do a bit better research on what I was going to be. But it was also like a good, but it also was a good indicator of how I was choosing what I wanted to do, right? That I wasn't thinking about how much they made. It was like an absurd question to me. It makes a lot of sense, like for most people who are thinking about what they want to do, but to artists, that doesn't make any sense, right? But it was because I was just having fun doing what I was doing. And I just wanted to be involved in that thing that I loved. I loved the theatre. I wanted to be involved in it. I didn't care how or what or like where. I just wanted to do it. And like, I personally, and this is, me being a bit older now, I know that lots of people in the world um, do the job that they do because they have to. Like, they don't have opportunity, they don't have education, they have to go and do the same job their dad did and their grandfather before him and their great grandfather before that, or their grandmother, or like, and they have to go and do the whatever the job is in the town where they live. But if you're lucky enough to go to a school like Merchant Taylor's and have that education, you should be doing the thing you love. You should be focusing on the thing that you get the biggest kick out of. If that's like the art of math, and the way numbers work, like, good for you. Not my jam, but great. Like, if you love journalism, if you love chemistry, like I feel like that's what Merchant Taylor's was about for me. Is like, it gave me the opportunity, and I think it's true of all my mates who I still know from Merchant Taylor's. I don't really know that many people. There are, of course, plenty, but I would say a lot of people like are something to do with the thing, like, and sometimes people are just motivated by money, right? They just want to make as much money as possible. That's cool. And then you're like, well, I'm just going to go do something that I'm interested in and then just focus on that. But even those people are like, so I want to do economics. I want to spend a lot of time working on economics. Then I want to go into banking. Like, they were focused. They were focused on what they wanted to do, and they're still doing it now, and they're doing really well. And I think like that is, like, if you're at somewhere like Merchant Taylor's, like, this isn't like a commercial for the school, but you are really, really lucky to be having an education like that. And I think, like, if anything, you should be coming away from that and doing something in a field that you got excited about whilst you were at school. Or at least, you should have I think you can healthily have an idea of what you like, at least by the time you get through the A levels, certainly. So for me, like, that was, it's about enjoyment and satisfaction, and particularly with the art area is fun. So I speak to a lot of parents. Ask me this now. They'll say, my kid's really good, and we've been asked by an agency to like start auditioning for like kids TV stuff, and I tell them all not to do it. I'm like, just like, why are you turning this into a job when they're like 10? Like just it's you, they don't even know if they like doing it. Like, it should be like going to do a dance, ballet, or going to play footy. Like, it should be just that. That's all it should be, And we were all just doing it for fun, and then by doing it for fun, you get really good at it sometimes. So that's my advice: is just don't make it a job for as long as possible.
That's good advice. I like that. Last question, which I know, as they're not here live, I know always comes up from people's in these situations, is all they ever want to know about is auditions, and any tips for auditions. I guess you audition for stuff right the way through, even they obviously do now. And is there any magic tips you have for auditions?
There's no magic bullet, but so one side of it is it's a job interview, right? So preparation. You have to know your lines. Like, you have to know them. And there's reasons for all this stuff. You have to know your lines. You have to know what the job is that you're auditioning for. Like in an interview, you have to know the company that you're interviewing to be part of. You have to know what they're about and what they're looking for. So you've read the script, you understand the genre, you understand the medium, you understand who else might be involved. You know who the director is. You find out all these things as much as you can. depending on what the job is. You know, sometimes you're just going in for a day on something and you don't necessarily know anybody on it, but you would know what the job is that you're doing, or the program, or if you're going up for a play, you can read the play and all that stuff. So knowing what the thing is important, and knowing your part of what you can control, being prepared to do that is important. So if you as an actor, you need to be awake, you need to be sober, you need to know your lines, you need to be in a good mood, preferably, and then you get into like standard interview dynamics where you should be nice to be around. You should be like, people are going to spend time with you. You should want to be there and express enthusiasm for the thing it is that you're there to do. Like, there's a lot of like basic good human behavior that translates across any field, right? And auditions are no different.
Yeah.
And I really like auditions. I really like in-person auditions because you know, it's very much like just meeting someone for a pint in the pub. Like, it really can be really nice to meet people and get in a room and change the energy of a room, you know, and all that stuff. And it's fun. And it should be, again, like I go back to the fun thing, like it should be, you know, have fun. Go in, like, no one wants to work with someone who's not fun.
Yeah.
So, you know, you should be enjoying what you're doing and be available for a laugh, and get on with your work, and also have a good time while you're doing it. I think that's really important. And people forget, they put all this pressure on themselves to be really impressive, when what you should be putting pressure on yourself is to be relaxed.
Yeah.
Like what do I need to do so I can walk in there and be like fun and actually listen to whoever's talking to me and not be in my own head? Like, those are the biggest tips. Self-confidence and relaxation are the things that will book you jobs more than anything else. Mm. And I bet Nikki Swift said something similar about being relaxed. He's a singer as well as an actor, and you literally cannot sing unless you're relaxed.
Yeah.
So your job is to...
She ran through some exercises, and she was like, well, even if you're not going to go into drama or anything, you know, keep these exercises and do them before any job interview or anything, you know, any kind of stressful situation that you go into.
Breathe. Yeah. Breathing is really important. This is going to sound like a left field to some people, but get good at meditation now. You think I'm joking. You might think I'm a crazy hippie from California, but find out what it is and start practicing. And you can do it just by doing 3 breaths, like just 3 mindful breaths where all you think about is breathing in and breathing out. If you do that every day at some point, I promise you your life will be better. And when you go, if you never do anything to do with the arts, if you go to an interview and 5 minutes before you're about to get called in, you go to the bathroom, sit on the toilet with the seat down, and take 3 breaths with your eyes closed and think about nothing but the breath going in and out. I guarantee you will get offered more jobs. So get good at meditating now. It's my best advice for anybody. It really is. That's a very, very powerful tool. And that is like what Nikki was talking about with breathing and doing some breathing exercises. Like that is the basis of, you know, take the scary term of meditation out of it and just breathe. Like, the more conscious breathing you do, the better your life will be. And that is a big tip for all auditions. I stand behind that. But for me, it's like, you know, you got to be prepared too. Because if you're really relaxed, but you don't know what you're doing, that won't be good either.
Not so good.
So, yeah, like there's, you know, I mean, now, you know, things have changed a lot, right? Because we're doing a lot of remote auditioning. That's the other part of this I wanted to talk about. Now we're doing, all my auditions they're not like this. I have a bit more of a sophisticated setup when I'm doing auditions on camera. But, you know, Merchant Taylor's students are not going to have to worry about that right now. But like in my world, when, you know, when I have to do an audition now, and this was before the pandemic too, like it wasn't just a case of doing my hair and going to getting in my car and driving to a studio. It has become a lot of self-tapes. And what that means is there's a whole setup that happens where, you know, there's a camera and a tripod and, you know, a backdrop, like not with scenery, but like a clear backdrop, and just clouds. And
I like to imagine some actual scenery, yeah.
Yeah, houses apart. You know, and then there's lights, and then there's a mic, and there's like all this stuff that you have to be a cameraman, an editor, and a, you know, and then that's all another job. People are doing that for theater jobs. Well, there's no theater jobs right now, but you know, but people are doing, you know, even for plays, you know, if you're in LA and you're auditioning for a job in New York, like, or you're in somewhere anywhere else and you're auditioning for a job in London, even if it's, you're probably not going to get to go in person. You have to do it on tape. So doing it on tape is a whole other kettle of fish, really. And again, like that, there's a whole other, you know, bag of tools that you need in order to do a good taped audition. But again, it comes back to the same thing about being prepared, being relaxed, you know, being focused on what you're doing. And then those things become, you know, a little bit part. It's always, again, like, how can I show that I'm also fun to work with and not going to drag a crew down on a self-tape? It's very difficult, but there are little windows of opportunity.
Yeah.
And but again, can't do that if you're not relaxed. Can't do that if you're not prepared. So
no,
that's all I got.
It's good advice, and it's good advice for life, that. So